I have a new book for you to enjoy. This movie, we will go over what's in the book so you can see if it's for you. The table of contents is on page 2, and I always reproduce it fully on my website on the sales page because I want everybody to be able to read in advance of purchasing to make sure they're getting what they need and want. Included is information about size, gauge of machine, whether a ribber is needed, appropriate yarn, and so forth. The book starts out with 3 easy VT patterns. This is the bulky pattern, next is the mid-gauge, and the standard gauge pattern. The neckline shaping that creates the V doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It's really just a finished slit. That's one of the reasons they're called easy. I've actually used the Easy VT design before for other purposes. This one is special because it's the curvaceous Easy VT with a stylish curved hem that is very flattering on a lot of us. 2 different lengths are included in all versions. There is already a playlist for this book that includes a lot of support videos, and one of them is how we create that wonderful curved hem, and it's not difficult at all. Another reason these are easy is that they don't require ribbing at the bottom. I offer 3 different hem finishes, all of them super simple to achieve. Cotton yarns are suggested for this design, and when you use them, nothing fancier is required. Next comes the Diamond Girl shell for standard gauge machines. The cable is a faux cable worked with tuck, manually selected so no patterning ability is needed in the machine. The next 2, hand manipulation with class and the Poor Girl tunic, are both for bulky machines. These designs involve a little bit of basket weave stitch and a cable, as well as drop stitch lace, and they are video supported. Next comes the PS blouse, which may be made on an electronic or punch card. This is a standard gauge pattern. The electronic version is a specific Brothers Stitch World design. You can use quite a lot of tuck cards you may have for the punch card version. I've included one of my own design that I particularly like. Changing punch card designs may change the gauge. So since it's a very simply shaped blouse, a gauge adjustment for 4 additional gauges is included. Next come 2 top-down vest or shell patterns, one for bulky and one for standard machines, plus a series of alterations to the standard gauge pattern that can create a much more fitted shell for young figures. There's a story behind this one. The original pattern was a top-down vest for children, available in just a few sizes in my top-down Togs book. My friend Jane really likes the pattern and makes it for her grandchildren quite a lot, and was wondering if an adult version was possible. So we collaborated. I designed the pattern, she knitted the samples, and the result is quite a success. The original pattern has straight across shoulders for simplicity. The simple straight across version is in this pattern, but because in some adult sizes and some yarns on some bodies, that makes for a sloppy shoulder line. Included is an article on adjusting the shoulder line for this and any other similar top. 3 methods are given, one for bottom-up garments, one for top-down garments as you knit, and a cut and sew method for the occasions when you discover that you needed to slant that shoulder line after you've knitted the garment. There are some videos on that too, and links are included, of course. You can top off everything you've knitted so far with the Tutti Frutti and Stupendous Stripes cardigans. Both use Hirschner's self-striping yarn, and both are really intended for mid-gauge machines. My standard gauge machines can also knit this yarn and match gauge, but I prefer the fabric on the mid-gauge machines. However, it's your call. Next comes really a book within a book. 4 different ways of knitting collars for polo shirts that you're going to sew yourself. The collar and placket patterns are included. There is not a shirt pattern. However, I do explain to you how to turn any basic t-shirt pattern that fits you well into a polo shirt using these collars. All of these are standard gauge patterns. The long stitch collar does require 2 beds to make. The stockinette collar only takes one bed, so any machine can do it. The garter carriage collar does require a garter carriage, of course. And the full needle rib collar requires a double bed setup, whether it's a Japanese machine with a ribber or a European double bed machine like a Passip or Superba. On that subject, I try to use generic language in all of my books. For example, I'll say place needles in hold rather than telling you what to do with Russell levers or the NH button. When I present an unusual technique, I will try to insert notes on how to achieve it on every machine that I know how to do it on. Here's an example, but I can't just give you knitting lessons inside the book, or it would be 1,000 pages long. So generally, you do need basic knitting skills in hand on your machine. However, I've included a chapter on translating Japanese styles of thinking about knitting, really, to European machines, because I found that knitters have a tendency to believe they're two separate animals, and really they are not. In almost every case, what one machine can do, another can do. You just have to know how to approach it. So there are 6 pages of Japanese to European machine translations, specifically Passip and Superba. The Passip language is in DM80 or Duo 80 or Duomatic 80 terms. Everything that can be done on the 80 can be done on the E6000, but they use different terms, and I do not include the technique numbers. That's something you would have to look up and cross-reference or know yourself. Japanese machines have needle spacing at 4.5 millimeters apart. Superbas and Passips have needles 5 millimeters apart. That's close enough to make them standard gauge machines. You may have to use a different stitch size on the dial to match gauge, but I'm almost always able to do so. I frequently knit garments partly on one machine and partly on another. It just takes a little bit of experimenting to find the sweet spot. So that's what's in Can You Top This? In the program notes for this video, I will include a link to the entire playlist, which is still getting videos added to it that supports this book, so that you'll have an easy time finding it. Happy knitting!